Yeah, so biosonar is really my area of expertise, and I got that way because I ended up doing an internship while I was in college studying bats. And I was just so fascinated that I went back to that lab to complete my PhD the next year. And so over, roughly 6 years of a PhD, I studied bats, and that I was working with big brown bats, and we were doing experiments looking at how they navigate through cluttered forest environments. And so that's how I got kind of into the field of bioacoustics. And when I moved out here to San Diego, I knew about the lab at the Navy Marine Mammal program, and I just emailed them and said, hey, I'm interested in your work. And I applied for a grant to do research, and I actually didn't get it. I didn't get the grant, but they said, hey, we have a project for you, and they hired me. And so I'm actually a little newer to the field of dolphin echolocation, but I've got about 3 years of experience now with that. So dolphins have a really funny looking head, right? They've got that kind of like bulbous structure in the front. They have a really long telescoping jaw, which gives them their really long nose. And it turns out that the jaw is actually really important for hearing in dolphins. So you wouldn't think of your jawbone as being particularly related to your ear, but it turns out that the jaw is a very important site for sound reception in dolphins. And they also have this other really funny thing, which is basically that their nose has evolved to go way up to the top of their head, right? So the blowhole is really their nose. And they use their nose to produce all of their sounds. And so unlike most other mammals, we use our larynx in our throats, right? Mm-hmm. They have a larynx, but they don't use it for vocalization. They use their noses. And what's super crazy about it is that they have 2 sets of what we call phonic lips. And so on either side of the forehead, inside the forehead, they have these little structures. It's almost like if you were to take a piece of grass and kind of blow and make a sound, they have these little tissue flaps in their head. And on one side, they use it to make echolocation clicks. And on the other side, they use it to make whistles. And so they can both whistle and talk to their friends at the same time as they're echolocating, using 2 different sides of their, what we would think of as a forehead, but what's really their nose up inside their head. So is that they have these air sacs up in their head that they use to kind of pressurize the air and to make the different sounds that they want to be making. And so all the air sacs that are up in their head means that if sound energy is coming from right above, if you kind of think of if you're trying to yell at your friend while they're underwater or while they're in the air and you're underwater, the sound doesn't really transfer very well between air and water. It reflects away. And so not all of the sound energy can go from one medium to the other. There's a lot of reflections that happen. And so if a dolphin is trying to communicate with their friend that's directly above them and the friend is whistling and whistling, some of that sound energy is going to bounce off of the air sacs that are inside the head and not really reach the ears because, again, the jaw is that important site for sound reception. And so if the dolphin that they're trying to communicate with is below them and their friend is making all these whistles down there, it'll have a more direct path to the jaw. I can give an example of whales, right? Large whales communicating over vast, huge distances using lower frequency sounds. These frequencies overlap with commercial shipping frequencies, and these commercial ships create these very loud, low frequency sounds. And if the whales are trying to communicate in the same frequency range as this very loud sound, it'd be like trying to shout over a friend who is also talking, or if you were right next to like a waterfall and you're saying shh, no one's going to hear you say shh if you are next to a waterfall, right? And so issues like that is definitely one of the applications for this research, is understanding how whales and dolphins communicate, over what distances, and what types of frequencies are going to affect that or going to reduce their ability to communicate. Another cool application for the research that I do is what we call bio-inspired engineering. And so one of the reasons that a lot of people are interested in echolocation there's kind of two big applications. The first one is to create technologies that help the blind to use sound to navigate in their environment. And there are these little devices that they can attach to potentially a cane or attach to them. And there are training programs that allow people who are blind to train them to echolocate. And so currently, if you were to compare human technology with bat and dolphin echolocation, we would need, thousands of dollars worth of equipment, hundreds of microphones, and hundreds of speakers to come up with anything even remotely close to the ability of a dolphin or a bat. So a dolphin has 2 ears, dolphins and bats have 2 ears, and one source, one emitter, one voice, right? So they do with 2 ears what would take us hundreds of microphones to do. And the reason that, my training is completely in neuroscience, right? And what we want to understand is what's happening in the brain that's allowing these animals to do more with the same types of information. And so some of my research currently is about how dolphins perceive echoes that's coming from the objects in their environment, and what aspects of those echoes, what are the parts of the acoustic stimulus that they're receiving that they're paying the most attention to? What are the cues in that waveform, in that acoustic wave? What are the cues that are in there that the dolphin is actually using? What is their brain doing with that information to be able to come up with this perception of, oh, this is the fish that I want to eat, versus maybe this is a fish that you don't want to eat, right? And so there are very practical problems that dolphins use echolocation to solve, and they do it in such a sophisticated way that outperforms man-made sonar easily.
Right. Like what sorts of modeling are you working with to try to answer those questions?
Oh gosh, so much. I'm definitely more on the biology and psychology perception end of things. But I work with electrical engineers who are able to do amazing things with modeling in programs like MATLAB, and they're able to basically, come up with mathematical ways to simulate not only what happens in the physical acoustic environment, but then what happens after that acoustic stimulus reaches the ear, right? So what happens at the stage of processing in the ear, there's mathematical steps you can follow to transform it from a physical to an electrical impulse, right? So you're transforming energy from the physical, it's called mechanotransduction, right? So you have a mechanical energy stimulus in the environment, and the ear is doing something incredible. The ear is complex and poorly understood compared to the eye. And what the cells inside of the ear are doing are picking up that physical movement and transducing the energy into an electrical impulse that's then sent to the brain. And then once you get to the brain, it's a whole other ballgame. So you have these steps where you have to model the transformation of the acoustic stimulus into what the ear does with it, and then what the brain does with it.